5 to 10 years. So you got a couple years to wait. I borrowed this outline. That's Preacher Doctor stole it, but I borrowed it. But I had to tweak it because I can't even take my old sermons and preach them without tweaking them. I'm just unable to do that. Have you heard about somebody that the only thing they're good for is a bad example? You know? Well, we're going to be looking at some people who are a bad example of motive, but not necessarily of methods. You know, you can learn things from people who aren't perfect. You know, just because a person is a bad person doesn't mean they're not a good accountant. And so we're going to be looking at a incident in the Bible, and we're going to be learning some good things from their bad example. I want you to turn to Genesis 11, verses 1 through 9. Now the whole earth had one language and the same words. And as people migrated from the east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. And they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly." And they had brick for stone and bitumen for mortar. And they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we just be dispersed over the face of the whole earth." And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of man had built. And the Lord said, "Behold, they are one people, and they have one language. And this is only the beginning of what they will do, and nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them. Come, let us go down there and confuse their language, so that they may not understand one another's speech." So the Lord dispersed them from there over the face of all the earth, and they left off building the city. Therefore its name was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth. And from there the Lord dispersed them over the face of all the earth. Genesis is a very good thing to study because it's not a fairy tale. It's the way things happen. And if you look at languages today, you can find out that they do have back to one, but they've split and they've gone crazy. And today we see movements toward globalism and all being one, and usually everything involved in that ends up turning for the bad. But because of pride, the people began to build a city and a large tower so they wouldn't be dispersed on the earth. What it is they wanted to take control of their own destiny and wanted to leave God out. And God was not pleased with their effort, so he confused the language and separated them. Now, there were three things that they needed to accomplish what they wanted to do. The first is they were united. Because all the people had one thought, one mind, one desire, they were united. They were able to decide to build this city. The The second is they were willing to work. Unfortunately, nothing gets done without work. And the sad fact is when people decide to work, everybody, things get done. But when people don't really want to work, things don't get done. You know, it's like saying that when it comes to work, everybody is either a sail or an anchor. You either help push the work ahead or you drag it back. That's the only two choices people have, be a sail or an anchor. And then they were united. And then the third is the one that's dealt with most in this particular story, is they were able to communicate. Communication is paramount in getting everything done. That's why the Lord changed the language, because it was so easy for them to work together, not to do good, but to do whatever their hearts desired. And the fact is when we do what our hearts desire, usually we end up far from God. But they were able to communicate, to talk to one another, to plan, and to make things work. My wife and I got cheap. We decided to buy a very cheap knockoff of a Roomba. Can you say $39 thrown down a rat hole? I can. It wasn't very much, and what it did, I don't know, because you know, there's this one little thing. I don't speak Chinese, and the instructions are in Chinese. So, communication is really important. Good communication. And if you don't believe that, ask Joe Evans, who has several times gone to restaurants in Telangana and asked for monkey. Because Cody and Koti, one means chicken, one means monkey. And neither he or I can remember which is which. So I just go to Hindi and say Merg. But the thing is communication was vital. For them to build that city, they needed to have everybody wanting to work. Have you ever seen the documentaries on the pyramids? They had whole cities around that where everybody had a job and everybody did something. If you want to accomplish something great, everybody has to be involved. Everybody has to be willing to work. They were united. They had the same purpose, the same goal. We see it in our world. When people unite, they can accomplish great things when they have the same goal. There's a story of people looking for a lost little girl. They searched and couldn't find her, so finally somebody said, let's join hands. And they found her, but it was too late. Unity is important to accomplish anything. And like we said, being able to talk to one another and being able to understand one another. Now, these people use these things in a a bad way. Not to serve God, not to do good. But Genesis 11:6 says it took God to stop them. It took God to stop people who were willing to work, united, and able to communicate. What can we do for God if we take these three things that they had and use them in the service of God? What a wonderful thing to do, to first get the idea that maybe we all need to be willing to work. Turn to 1 Peter, the 3rd chapter, and verse 15. But in your hearts, regard Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you. Always be ready. Always be ready. I'd like to tell you that you can plan for the work of the church, and you can. But the fact is, we plan, God laughs. Things happen, and we have to adapt. So people need to be willing to work, to always be ready. Now, we as Christians need to be united. I know that's hard to do. Let's turn to John 17, 20 through 21. 20 and 21. The Gospel of John, chapter 17. Got ahead of myself there. Chapter 17, starting with verse 20. I do not ask for these only, but also for those who believe in me through their word, that they may all be one, just as you, Father, are in me, and I in you, that they also may be in us, so that the world may believe that you have sent me. You know, people don't pray for things that they don't think are important. They pray for something that they really want. Well, Jesus prayed that his people would be united. That is something, if it was that important for him to pray, and important enough for God to have that put into the scriptures, it ought to be pretty important to us to understand that that's not an option for Christians. Unity is a necessity, not an option. Turn also to Ephesians 4:3. I'm sure you can find that because that's one of the things I always hit on. Eager to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. Some people are eager to split things up. We should be eager to bind things together. That should be our desire at all times. Turn to Matthew 12:25. Knowing their thoughts, he said to them, every kingdom divided against itself is laid waste, and no city or house divided against itself will stand. He was talking about something specific, but the principle there is true. If the church is to stand, it must not be divided. It must work together. And now we're going to go back into the Old Testament for a little bit of common sense knowledge. Although maybe common sense isn't very common, so maybe I shouldn't call it that. But we're going to look Ecclesiastes, the 4th chapter, in verse 12. And this is one that would be really good to write out on a little 3x5 card and put on your mirror so you can see it in the morning when you get ready. And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, two will withstand him. A threefold cord is not easily broken. One might make it. Two is better, and three is better still. Simple common sense. But do we use that in the church? Do we really understand that we need to be united as a congregation, and we need to be united with all other congregations? We need to think alike. We need to have a common goal. Now that doesn't mean that it has to be exactly the same. You know, I'm sure there was somebody there in Babel that was building the roads. And there was somebody that was in charge of building houses. And somebody was in charge of building the tower. But that was all part of the same plan. It's okay if some congregation has a different focus on the big plan than you have. But you got to be part of the big plan. We need to forfeit our ease, our grudges, opinions, and our preferences in order to maintain unity.
Amen.
It's not easy to be united. You're going to have to pull your load. You can't be lazy and be united. You've got to give up our grudges. That's not fun. I like my grudge. And our opinions and our preferences. You know, I'm convinced that in some congregations, if they decided they needed a curtain here, they'd fight for 3 years over what color that curtain had to be. Does it really matter? No. I got a way to solve that. You take a quarter out of your pocket, you put it up in the air, heads you win, tails you win. It's over. Because it doesn't really matter. I think an awful lot of men's meetings and elders' meetings could have been a whole lot better if somebody would just pull out a quarter and say, does it matter? No. Then flip a coin and go with it. The last thing that we need as a church is communication. One of those, let's turn to 1 Peter 5, 1, 2, and 3. So I exhort the elders among you, as a fellow elder and a witness of the sufferings of Christ, as well as a partaker in the glory that is going to be revealed, shepherd the flock of God that is among you, exercising oversight, not under compulsion, but willingly as God would have you, not for shameful gain, but eagerly, not domineering over those in your charge, but being examples to the flock. Deb and I have to be able to communicate to you, to explain to you what we're doing, what we're not doing, and why we're doing it, and why we're not doing it. Now, the next one, let's turn to 1 Thessalonians, the 5th chapter. And when we get to the 5th chapter of 1 Thessalonians, we're going to turn to verses 12 and 13. We ask you, brothers, to respect those who labor among you and are over you in the Lord and admonish you, and to esteem them very highly in love because of their work. Be at peace among yourselves. Communication is not one way. It has to go both ways. You have to be able to express your wants, your needs, your fears, and your desires, and why. There's a common theme in every romantic film you've ever seen on TV. Somebody does something, and their person who loves them doesn't understand what they did, and the whole rest of the plot rests on that. The movie would be over in 3 minutes if they would just communicate. The church would move forward if we would just communicate and say what we feel and what we need. Now also, turn to John 13:35. By this, all people will know that you are my disciples if you have love for one another. We need to communicate Christian to Christian. We need to talk. We need to share. When there's no communication, there is a us versus them mentality. We as human beings love to compete. So it's the easiest thing in the world for us to join up sides and, well, it's us and it's them and it's... We need to talk to one another, and we need to listen. Communication requires listening and careful examination of the words we use. To carefully look at the words and the tone and to pay attention. Unfortunately, all of us, me as well as anybody else, maybe more than anybody else, we listen to respond rather than listen to answer. We listen not to understand, but so we can get ready to say what we want to say. You miss it when you do that. miss words and understanding, and it's important to pay attention to what people say and to listen. And if something sounds weird, why not say, did you mean? If somebody says something that rankles you and doesn't sound like it ought to be coming out of their mouth, why not say, did you mean? And the answer will probably be, no. I meant this. We need to look at the words people say, but sometimes we need to ask them, what did they mean? Because all of us are imperfect and sometimes use the wrong words. Because there's a lot of words. It is important that Christians use these same things that the people of Babel used, but use them for good. If they could only be stopped by God, what could the church do if we all decided we wanted to work? If we all decided we want to be united, and we all decided we wanted to communicate, we wanted to understand what the other people said, and then we want to let them know what we think. So many times, people in the Lord's church are divided by semantics, not by realities. Dove has a wonderful book written by some major denominational leaders that says everything that the restoration plea is all about, but it just uses different words. Same ideas, different words. Communicate. Don't let the church be divided by faulty definitions. If anybody needs to answer the invitation in a public way, you can come now as we can and as we sing.